Joins me now. Good afternoon, Anne.
Afternoon, John. How are you?
I'm all right. I was shocked that you didn't win. I thought it was going to be close, but I was shocked. But what about you? Were you shocked or devastated or just generally peed off about it all?
No, I wasn't shocked to lose. I think I was slightly surprised who I lost to. I had said all along, and I meant it, that there could be, we can't predict what's going to happen. And I think perhaps I, unknown to myself, had some sort of inkling that there was going to be a surprise. I had thought going into it, if I'm going to lose to Peter Whittle. So I was surprised that Henry Bolton won, but I wasn't necessarily surprised that I didn't, if you mean. I was expecting perhaps an upset. But I'd almost forgotten about him. More for me. I'd almost forgotten about him. But
So how come he's attracted all those votes then? Because clearly the party hadn't forgotten about him.
Oh, well, clearly. I don't know. I think this was always going to be a mammoth task for me. And because I had the whole party against me, and if you can look at hustings, and there's the snide remarks made by other candidates, and they're always aimed at me. In newspapers, in The Guardian, you'll have senior UKIP sources, whoever they are, will have said this nasty thing or that nasty thing about me. And repeatedly at hustings, people would come up to me and say, we're being told terrible things about you, which are really unfair. So there was this poison being dripped out about me from the very beginning, from the party. So it was always going to be a mammoth task for me. But I don't know, perhaps they were sending out as much positivity about Henry Bolton as they were negativity about me. Really, but that's how it goes. It was a bit of a surprise.
Okay. Well, they weren't snide remarks afterwards, were they? In interviews that Henry Bolton's done, and indeed what Nigel Farage said. What did you make of Nigel Farage? He said that UKIP had been saved from the fascists and the Nazis. He's clearly talking about you and the people who support you.
I mean, I wasn't surprised at all, actually, either by the racist thing or the Nazi thing or the fascist thing. Look, it's exactly the same thing that has been done to UKIP for years. They did to me. Now, they know perfectly well, and if they don't, then I'm extremely worried about them, that it's not racist or fascist or Nazi to criticize a religion. However strongly, however offensively, it is none of those things. This is a deliberate smear. And they know it, They really, there's this idea as well that anyone who is concerned about Islam is some knuckle-dragging Neanderthal. Essentially the same thing that Remainers are still saying about, people who want to leave Brexit. They're ignorant, they're, knuckle-draggers. They have the same idea about people who object to Islam. And they're spreading this idea, so that this is why we get low turnout at protests and marches and things, because people believe that even if they know themselves that there are massive issues with Islam, they've been so persuaded by this relentless rhetoric from the media and the politicians now, including UKIP, that there's something wrong with them if they have a problem with Islam or if they're concerned about Islam. And this poison has now spread even further thanks to UKIP. And frankly, I think they enjoyed the little bit of reprieve they got. They had someone else to call Nazi for a change. But I can assure them that now that they've swept me out of the way, the press will go right back to calling them Nazis again. I think they enjoyed their little break, but it was a temporary one.
So what do you make of Bolton's plan for the party? I mean, he gave, as I said in my introduction, he gave one interview to the young lad on Sky, but then when he came on to do his speech, it was different. It had obviously been got at by the party bosses. I mean, he was basically saying no cap on immigration, don't worry about a transition, we need a transition. You're going against major UKIP policies. Yeah. It's as if he didn't even understand what the manifesto was or what the party's about. And so what's their point of difference now?
Well, this is what happens when you have someone who doesn't really have firm principles that they themselves as an individual are standing on. They will essentially say whatever they think they need to say at the time. And especially with the media, you'll find that politicians are afraid of the journalist and will be afraid of an attack. And will say what they think that journalist wants to hear. Then they'll say something else to another audience and something else again to another audience, because they're not actually firmly standing on a basis, on their own principles. And that's what you get. You're saying different things all the time because you haven't actually got a core principle that you're standing on. So it's politics as usual now with UKIP. They've got someone who will say what he's told to say, will say different things. I mean, he said different things throughout the hustings as well. I mean, I can recall him saying that Islam was this massive threat to our way of life after he'd seen the applause I was getting. And, you know, it was just, he'll say whatever he thinks needs to be said at the time. I mean, I know Nigel called him a man of substance. I completely disagree. It's a spokesman, simply a spokesman,
Okay.
which is exactly what UKIP didn't need.
Okay, is he a spokesman or a placeman for Nigel Farage? A lot of people on Twitter were suggesting that, and quite a lot of people in the sort of political commentariat were suggesting that Farage has made sure that somebody's there so that whenever he wants, he can come back. Would you subscribe to that idea?
I wouldn't make any allegations about anything. He certainly would have struck me as Farage's choice from the beginning. Because he's not going to make any particular noises. He's not going to make any particular problems for the party, which, you know, it gets rid of the whole radical element of it. But, you know, it's certainly, once again, as I said, we've got politics as usual, and there's certainly, again, no real voice for the working class here. And I think that was a huge problem. We can never discount snobbery in all of this, dismissal as well, because, of course, it's the working class areas that are up front with the Islamic problems. And so they don't feature in the worlds of commodities traders and Sandhurst graduates. So they're not concerned about it, and they'll happily dismiss working class people and anyone with any concerns like this as Neanderthals. And this is exactly what's happened. So it's a perfect polished politician, although not very
okay. And as I said in my intro as well, I was hoping that you'd get elected on the level of, at least then it would be put on the table, the Islam thing, and you know, Muslims and the whole thing. You know, this weekend we had Austria banning the burqa. I told that little story about these Australians I met over the weekend in deepest Somerset, and it just seems to me we've got to have the debate. And then we've got these Muslim women who are married to these monsters and their stories coming out in the papers. I just feel that if we don't have this debate soon, then we are going to go to hell in a handcart, aren't we?
Yeah,
it's going to be too late to have the debate soon.
Yeah, and I was willing to take the battering from the press in order to get that debate. You know, I don't enjoy how the press treat me. A lot of them treat me like I'm something on their shoe. You know, I don't enjoy this. But I was willing to do it. I was willing to be the one to take the punches so that we could have this public debate. And I heard what you said before, and you're absolutely right. They will start talking about things I've said, and and other people will talk about that, and it will eventually we'll be talking about it. And it would have happened. You know, the press they shouldn't have this much power. They're essentially running the country because the politicians do what will make the journalists happy because they don't want to take those blows. They don't want to take those punches. I was willing to because you survive it. You know, it's not the end of the world. It's a nasty experience, but you walk away at the end and something has happened. Something has been spoken about.
A lot of people on Twitter are calling Farage a traitor. What do you make of that?
Well, it depends on the traitor to what. I mean, I think his focus is the European Union, and that is sole focus. And funnily enough, I was called the one-trick pony by people who only want to talk about the European Union. But what I don't understand is there is a life happening right here in Britain that doesn't involve the European Union, and which is absolutely vital for the people who are here. We can deal with more than one issue at once. And frankly, if you can't, I don't know why, I'm not sure how competent you're going to be as a politician if you can't deal with more than one serious issue at once. And, you know, somebody put out on Twitter today a fantastic tweet, best one I've seen, was that, you know, Nigel is going to make sure that if England becomes a caliphate, it'll be a caliphate outside the European Union. I mean, this is perfect, because it's completely unconcerned, it seems to me, what's happening inside the country, and solely concerned with big politics, big business, big money. Meanwhile, people here, right here in Britain, are suffering for a variety of reasons, which are not being addressed by UKIP. And I wanted to address them as well. So I was not the one-trick pony at all. It's quite frankly the other way around.
You could, well, some people have been even less polite. I mean, Katie Hopkins called Farage a cockwomble, but we'll leave that there. Just talk to me then now about you and where you go. I've asked people on a poll today, should you form a new political party? 81% of people say yes. Are you leaving UKIP? Are you going to set up a party?
I don't know yet. I really don't know. I haven't made any decisions yet. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't want to give them the pleasure of leaving. But on the other hand, what's the point in staying? There's not. People tell me, you can go the next. He might not last, and then you can go the next time. I think, well, look, the machine will still be there. The machine that dripped poison out about me all over the country would still be there, even if Henry Bolton was gone. And there's very little I can do about them. So there is little point in me staying in the party, but at the same time, I don't particularly want to leave. I haven't made any decisions on it yet.
But they may sack you anyway, mightn't they? They may kick you out. That's what they're talking about.
Yeah, I've no doubt that's on the cards. I mean, he tried to get me removed from the ballot paper, of course, and I saw an interview with him yesterday talking about how people are being sidelined and silenced and their opinions are not being heard because their opinions are controversial. I think, are you hearing yourself? That's exactly what you did to people with views about Islam you didn't like. So, like I say, it's just all speaking. It's all talking. This is saying what you think people want to hear.
If you did get kicked out of UKIP, would you form a party? And do you think a significant amount of members would follow you out the door?
I hope so. I think there are a lot of disillusioned people, and it's not just with the results, but with there was no need whatsoever for the racist and the Nazi stuff that came afterwards. And I think that's really what's angered people. And there are, 2,700, however much it was, people that have essentially been called Nazis and racist by the hierarchy of UKIP. I will do my best to bring them with me and do my best to persuade them. But of course, again, it's a mammoth task, but things are changing. I think a big argument has to be that we are living in essentially a two-party state. We need and want proportional representation, and we don't want this silly thing they offered us a few years ago. And this was prior to the 2015 general election, and one thing that showed us was how unjust it was for Scotland, for the Scottish National Party to get so many seats with fewer votes than UKIP. We can also show the AFD results in Germany, where the AFD got 94 seats in a night because of proportional representation, whereas we couldn't possibly do that because of first past the post. So we need to really make sense, put this stuff into clear language and persuade people that we need real change now, because the Labour-Tory swapping of power is no longer fit for purpose in the 21st century.
Do you think your agenda, particularly when it comes to Sharia, particularly when it comes to the whole Islam question, do you think that debate is going to get going still? Because, as I say, I'm there in deepest, darkest Somerset, talking to two Aussies, and they're dropping their voices. Well, I don't want to have to drop my voice, because do you know what, Anne-Marie? I'm not saying anything racist. I'm just saying what I genuinely believe. I'm not a racist at all, and I should be allowed to say that, whether I'm in a bed and breakfast or whether I'm on a radio station or if I'm on TV or in a newspaper. I need and I want this debate to happen, because if we don't, I don't know what's going to happen to our country. So how are you going to now personally help that move forward?
Well, I shall keep pushing. I mean, like I said, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm certainly not going away. But what was needed, and the reason people lower their voices, is because the entire establishment, the media and the politicians, keep telling them there's something wrong with them if they feel this way, if they think this way, so they're afraid to say it. So what we need is public figures to give them the confidence, particularly in politics, and this is what I was trying to do with UKIP, was to bring it into the public arena and to make it talked about in the public arena, so people themselves will become less afraid. They have to see that leadership, if you like, before they'll become for them to become more confident to speak as they find. And this is what we needed. It hasn't worked on this occasion with UKIP. The political class that is there now, and I very much include UKIP in that, won't do it. So we'll need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and perhaps a new political party is precisely what's needed. I think I'm persuading myself to do it right now.
Well, I think a lot of people would join you. Anne-Marie, I, for one, have enjoyed interviewing you over the last few weeks. Long may it continue. And more power to your elbow, because I certainly don't think you're a racist, a fascist, or light BNP. I think you're somebody who's got very deeply held views, and not just about Islam, and your voice needs to be heard. Lovely talking to you.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much indeed.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.